I think a generally agreed upon definition of neo-paganism would be an ancient pagan religion which has been brought perhaps into modern times, usually with some modifications because things change over time anyway, and is being practiced in the current day. And that would pretty much match what we do in the True Folk Assembly.
Okay. Yeah, because obviously it seems there's like a wide range of paganism. Obviously, there's no kind of, I don't know, authority saying what is and isn't paganism. My perspective from a total like lay perspective is there do seem to be some, I don't know, occult or witchcraft, Wicca, that kind of thing. I mean, that's what a lot of people think of when they think of paganism. Is that would you view that as paganism?
Well, I suppose you could say that's paganism, but it's really quite different from what we do.
Hmm.
Um, first of all, I seldom use the word pagan to describe what I do, actually.
Okay.
The word pagan comes from the Latin and means, or paganos, if I'm saying that right. I'm afraid my altar boy Latin is pretty corrupt. But it referred to people in the countryside, the pagus. And in the north, up in Scandinavia, around in there, the word would have been heathen because of the people of the heath, the people who lived out in the sticks, so to speak, out beyond the reach of the established system sometimes. So some people call what we do heathenry. I don't use that word myself because to me the word heathen, at least here in the States, connotates someone who's ignorant and unwashed and unkempt and not very bright. And I think that's not us at all.
So it's a derogatory term.
Right. To me, I think of Al-Satru in particular as an indigenous religion. Just as there are native religions in say Asia and in Africa, and that the American Indians have their own native religion and so forth. This is the historical religion of the people of one of the religions of the people historically in Northern Europe, and it reflects us. It reflects our inner being. It reflects all of our ancestors. It reflects the way that we have looked at the world as a people for thousands and thousands of years. It's sort of uniquely tailored to us, as I believe all natural religions are.
Hmm. Yeah, I've heard some speculation that there's been a lot of, well, historically there was a lot of interaction between Europeans and perhaps Indians and perhaps the East as well. And perhaps some people have even suggested that there might be, teachings in those religions that were wiped out in Europe and kind of attempting to revive some kind of indigenous belief by looking at those teachings. What do you think of that idea?
Well, my approach to Al-Satru is a sort of progressive. There's several different steps that one takes. I think your first sources that you use to try and recreate what you do in your religion should deal with the established literature that exists. And in the North, that's kind of scanty. We have the various sagas, we have the Eddas, and so forth. I believe you had a guest on previously who talked about those sort of things a bit. And so that's sort of your first resource when it comes to putting together and reconstructing and trying to work with a religion of this sort. So that after the original sources, you want to look at parallel things in other related cultures. For example, there's tremendous overlap between the old Celtic beliefs and the old Germanic beliefs and the old Slavic beliefs, because the Celts, the Germans, and the Slavs all are ultimately descended from what we call the funnel beaker culture that existed before any of those branched off and became distinct. But it's all Europe, it's all Northern Europe, it's all our common European ancestors.
Mm-hmm.
And looking a little farther afield, say, the old Indian beliefs are still a part of shall we say, the Indo-European family, and there are incredible parallels, surprising parallels actually, especially between the Celtic beliefs and the beliefs of ancient India. Of course, ultimately, my thought is that we are related to them genetically. They are the original, quote, Aryans, which, of course, is a Sanskrit word meaning noble. So there are connections there, and there's evidence, I think, that there was very much European type people in parts of India. The traditional theory is that there was a, quote, Aryan invasion into northern India, and therefore that many of these people are actually related to us and would have common roots, common background, and of course common inner selves, because I think that all native religions reflect the race or the group of people from whom it comes. Yeah, there are parallels. There definitely are. I kind of looked at some of your things on YouTube, and I believe you're into meditation and so forth, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and as am I in many ways. In the old mythic lore of the Germanic peoples, specifically of the Scandinavians, you have the story of Odin, the father of the gods. And sometimes he's depicted as a war god. He's all about making war, and he's got Valkyries and berserkers and, all of these very aggressive things. And that's legit. But primarily, he's a god of wisdom and the acquisition of wisdom. So he goes on these wisdom quests. And one of them was the winning of the mead of inspiration, in quotes. And in Old Norse, that would be something like, if Óðrarr, or that which the inciter to higher evolution, really, is the way I look at it. And in that story, Odin turns himself into a serpent, climbs up into a mountain, and up in that mountain, there's a female character who's described as a giantess, although she has a Valkyrie name, but that's a whole other subject. And he spends 3 nights with her, and she lets him drink from the elixir of immortality. And then he transforms into an eagle and flies off. Now, obviously, myths are symbolic. They're not historical. So, we have to keep that in mind. But then we look at, say, the Kundalini tradition in India, where you have the serpent power at the base of the spine, which is brought up from chakra to chakra, when in the Ajna chakra, you have the union of male and female principles. The Amrita, or the Soma, is produced, which is transformative. It's the elixir of immortality, transforms the individual into a higher being. And I think it would be highly unusual for those similarities to be just coincidences. I think that there was an ancient religion, or a tradition of spiritual evolution in Northern Europe that probably has been largely overlooked by scholars. And it's one of the many facets of Asatru that interest me, in addition to all the other stuff that there is in our religion. But yes, I think that there is a connection between various cultures and ours, and with judicious use, we can examine those other cultures and see what they tell us about ours. We can look at ancient India and maybe cautiously and with good judgment say, okay, so our ancestors, our direct ancestors, might have done such and such, and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I'm just wondering actually if for you is it more about the kind of historical value, or are you seeking spiritual truth? What's your main motivator?
Absolutely both. Absolutely both. My interest in Asatru arises, first of all, because it just seems so right and so natural to me. It is also valuable to me because I believe that it is important to our people, to the European descended people. Because I believe that, in a way, our race has become lost. We've sort of lost our soul in some respects. In tribal societies, when someone displays unusual symptoms or is acting a little strange, or maybe they're sick, they go and they see someone who is adept in the shamanic arts. And that the shaman will typically go into the, quote, other world and recover the person's soul. Is that that person's soul, quotation marks, has gone wandering. And so he brings that back. Now, that's a very broad description, and it applies to a lot of societies. It's not just the Norse or the Germanic. But I think we can make a comparison with groups as well. I think entire nations, entire races can lose their soul. And what I mean when I say that is that there's something spiritually wrong with them. They've gone adrift. They don't have a North Star to guide by. They succumb to modernism and relativism and all of the things that afflict our own society. I believe that my European descended brothers and sisters, many of them are adrift. Now, some find their answer in Christianity, and I don't mean to disregard that, and I respect their right and their interest in doing so. But for me, it's the way of our ancestors that gives us the guidance. It's the way of our forefathers and foremothers, to whom we are still connected intimately, going back into time. That is, for me, the way that we should follow, to find our souls again, to heal ourselves. White people have to heal themselves. They've become infected with strange and foreign viruses, and we can set that right.
So what aspects of paganism have you seen that make you think that it will somehow heal or be like a North Star for European people?
Our faith, we want to call it a faith. Faith implies blind belief, and I don't believe in blind belief. But our way tells us that we are connected to the holy powers, the gods and the goddesses, if you will, that they are at the same time our blood kin and, in a way, our friends. And as our kin, as us being literally, in some respect, their descendants, there is a harmony. There is a sense of belonging. There's an awareness that we are a distinct group, that we are of a certain descent, a certain line. It's a belief that encourages self-respect and self-acceptance. Not acceptance to be a slob, but the acceptance of ourselves as people who are growing, who are striving, who are trying in a very almost a Nietzschean or a Faustian way to become more than we are. I don't think the gods and the goddesses want us to worship them, to get down and just to submit ourselves to them. Quite the opposite. Especially Odin, who is ultimately a god of self-transformation. What he's saying to us isn't, kiss my ring, you mere human. What he's saying is, we are kin. Become like me. Become more than you are. Attain a higher level. Push yourself. Grow. That, to me, is our relationship with the gods and goddesses. And how could that not be a good thing for white people?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that sounds like definitely a positive message that would help people. Which other gods are there, and what is their relationship like with the followers of the way that of Asatru?
Well, the gods and the goddesses are typically divided into two very large groups, large, quote, families. One is the Aesir. That's spelled A-E-S-I-R. Some people say Aesir. I say Aesir. I think that's probably closer. The Aesir are typically aggressive. They have the capacity of being warlike. They are often associated with the sky. They are the gods and the goddesses connected with rulership and with warfare. And that would include Odin, who is typically conceived as father of the gods, and Thor. Everybody knows about Thor, right? Because of the movie, of course. This is America. And in fact, what I'm wearing is what we call Thor's hammer. In the mythology, of course, Thor wields this big hammer in which he defends the realms of the gods and the realms of humankind against the giants. And we think of this as defending against stasis, against stagnation, against the forces of entropy, versus the living, developing, growing, changing way of our group, of ourselves. And you've got Odin, you've got Thor, you've got Odin's various and sundry sons, you've got the goddess Frigga, Odin's wife, she's a mother figure, but so much more than that. She is a worthy counterpart for Odin. She is wise in her own right. She is powerful in her own right. And then the other family is the Vanir, and the Vanir are typically more associated with fertility, with growth, with subsistence, with sexuality, and so forth. The two principal deities among the Vanir are Freya, the goddess. She's called a goddess of love, and that's true, but she is so much more because, for example, in the mythic lore, she has first choice of the fallen warriors. Everybody knows about Odin, taking the heroes to Valhalla, and okay, that's a valid part of the lore. But at the same time, they forget that Freya actually gets first pick and take them to her hall. So she is not just a Playboy centerfold. Playboy has centerfolds these days. I think they were changing them or something. Whatever. But she's not just a beautiful woman. She's not just a sex object by any means. She's a warrior, and she is wise. She has her own form of. Odin's magic is the magic of the runes and the ecstasy that comes with the mead. But Freya's magic is different. It's woman's magic. It's powerful magic. It's called Seidr. And it's much more shamanic, really, than what we think of as being Odin's hidden arts. So you've got these two basic families amongst the Norse deities. And I think we can look at that many ways. Some people like to think of the gods and goddesses as just archetypal symbols in the collective unconscious, sort of that Jungian thing. But to me, that's only a two-dimensional figure. It's like a cardboard cutout of the actual deity. I mean, I've had things happen to me that convinced me that the gods are for real. I'm going on and on and on. You can just tell me to shut up anytime.
No, it's good. I'm listening. So someone else on a slightly different topic. Someone else has asked me to ask you. So there's, there's been some discussion of whether we should embrace Christianity or go all the way back to paganism, considering that it's sometimes difficult to recover large aspects of it, I suppose. And some people theorize that maybe we need to adopt Catholicism because it's like it has the true legacy, the unbroken lineage of pagan teachings somehow kind of sewn in there. What's your perspective on this idea?
Well, first of all, obviously, I personally am completely and unhesitatingly committed to the gods of the North. But I was raised a Catholic. My mom and dad were Catholics. All my relatives were Catholics. All my ancestors for generations have been Catholics. Certainly my Irish side is all Catholics, and my probably some of my German side as well. Probably not so much my English side, but I exist in this matrix of ancestry and of kinship, and many of those kin were Christians. I don't dishonor them for that. I revere and respect and care for all of my ancestors, not just the ones that followed the old ways. Now, my take on it is that we really need to kind of heal this breach between Christians and pagans, each respecting the other and allowing people to follow their conscience. Just as you hear the expression "no more brother wars," no more fightings amongst the European descended peoples, no more white on white wars. Just as you have that, I think we need to add a bit and say no more religious wars between brothers. We just can't do that. I think that people need to be free to follow Christianity if they wish, or to follow paganism if they wish. I don't know that we have to be all of one faith. Now, my own observation is that despite some of the theories I've heard, it seems to me that Christianity is still largely not a good fit on a very, very deep level for our race. Actually, here, let me show you a book. This is a really good book. It's The Germanization of Early Medieval Christianity, and it's by James C. Russell. And it shows how when Christianity came into Northern Europe, it first of all tried presenting Jesus as pretty much the stereotype, peace, love, good vibes, and so forth. And my Christian friends, please forgive me for oversimplifying there. But people in the North weren't having it. They wanted a heroic deity, and so the missionaries went back and recast the message to Germanize it, to allow them to successfully convert our ancestors. But that adaptation was necessary, and there's no adaptation required for our native beliefs. I mean, that is us. That is definitely clearly springing from our blood, from the soil of our being, from the very roots of our existence. In fact, pagans in Europe fought a 1,000-year war in resisting Christianity. And that's just the truth. If you start off with Constantine, say, in Italy against the Italic pagans, and on up over the years, across the centuries, up painstakingly through Germany, France, modern day Germany, modern day France, and all of those countries in Central Europe, finally up into the north. It wasn't until say 1300 or so that the last public practice of paganism was eradicated. About 1,000-year war. Our ancestors did not succumb easily to Christianity. And in the north, in the sagas, the Norwegian kings' sagas in particular, we have evidence and time again, people being martyred for the old faith, for the old pagan gods. People were put to death. They were mutilated. They were exiled. And if the particular king was in a good mood, they were only fined. So, with all respect to modern day Christians, and with no animosity towards them for this, because it's not their fault, the truth is, our race fought Christianity for 1,000 years. We've been some version of pagan since our existence. So let's say 40,000 years for modern humans in Europe, and that's who knows. There's a lot of dispute about all that sort of stuff, but we have been Christian for about 2% of our existence. All that other time, we chose something else, and we did pretty well by that. We survived under incredibly harsh circumstances, and we had virile societies. We had societies that have been largely underestimated, throughout the Northlands. The Celtic accomplishments, as you probably are aware, are incredible, and the Greeks certainly had systems that were highly evolved. The oldest democracies in Europe were pagan. They were actually also true. You have the Icelandic all thing. You have the thing that's Thing, which is the old assembly. You had the assembly in Isle of Man, all of which predate Christianity by a long shot. If you look at the construction of the Germanic tribes, the archetypal, typical, vanilla-flavored Germanic tribe had three main components. You had the chieftain. Most of the time. You didn't always have a chieftain. I think the Saxons only had a chieftain when they went to war, and then they elected somebody to take care of all of that. But typically, you had the chieftain, You had an assembly of leading men, sort of intermediaries that kind of kept a check on the leader and kept him from just doing whatever he wanted. They ensured that he stayed within the bounds of the law, and the law was set by the freemen in the assembly. So what you had was actually very parallel to, say, in the United States, where you have the executive branch, the judicial branch, and the legislative branch. Mm-hmm. It was democracy in its purest and least corrupted form, unlike what passes for democracy today, which is absolutely an obscenity. So all I'm saying is people underestimate the way of our ancestors. If people want to be Christians, hey, I support you. I will fight shoulder to shoulder with Christians, with atheists, with agnostics, with theosophists, Rosicrucians, I don't care. For me, the struggle that we face today, the struggle on which the future of our race depends, is at this point, a political struggle. It's not a struggle of faith. And it's time to end the brother wars, all the brother wars, to include the religious ones. That's what I think.
I agree. Vox Day, I might have him on soon to talk about this, but he's been making the case that the greatest enemy of the globalists today is Christians. Globalists, they really seem to hate Christians. Actually, they are often, criticizing them, trying to undermine them, trying to tear down their monuments, kind of things like that. So, what's your perspective on why the globalists even hate Christianity so much?
Well, Christianity has in fact been a powerful force against the globalists, and I respect that. I acknowledge that. You've got Poland, you've got Hungary, especially the ones that come to mind right now because they're fighting, the immigration thing and to retain their identity. And I see that applies, throughout the culture to a large extent, and I respect that. But the ultimate weakness of Christianity, as I see it, is that it does not spring from the soul of our race. Whereas the ancient Germanic beliefs, the Celtic beliefs, the Slavic beliefs, all of these come from us easily, naturally. We absolutely would be a big obstacle to the globalists because they want a homogenized mass. We will fight not just for our gods. We will fight for the existence of our people. My saying is the simple 8 words. The existence of my people is not negotiable. And I know that many Christians share that view, but it certainly isn't limited to Christianity. And believe me, the globalists would find us, for our size, our numbers are tiny compared to Christianity. Well, we're absolutely opponents of the globalists. The comparison I like to use, this is sort of a semi-historical bit. Charlemagne fought a extended and stubborn insurgency, which was composed of the Saxon pagans for a long time. Their ruler was strong and charismatic and fought Charlemagne, who wanted to impose Christianity upon them. And so, from that aspect, Charlemagne is not exactly one of our heroes. But of course, Charlemagne also fought the invading Muslims. And one of his aides, one of his right-hand men, was Holger Danske. And Holger Danske was from Scandinavia. And he's sort of semi-mythological. We're talking the world of legends here. And there's a few things that relate to him historically, but not a lot. And people don't think about what religion Holger might have been. They would have thought, well, he must have been a Christian. But actually, since he was supposedly Danish, and he fought with Charlemagne long before Denmark became Christian. Holger Danske would have been a pagan. He would have been a follower of the old ways. But apparently he had the vision and the foresight to understand that he had to ally with a Christian king, despite what the Christians had done to his related peoples, in order to stop something that was truly alien and truly hostile to the very way of Europe. And in that spirit, today, as we speak, and for years, ever since I'm certainly not excusing the globalist wars, but in defense against or in combat against Muslim forces, the radicals and the various and sundry not very pleasant types running around in the Middle East, many Al-Satruar, many pagans of the northern variety have fought against these guys. I've gotten tons of friends in the military who have fought against the radical Islamists, for example, and who are in their way doing their best to serve that cause. And that doesn't mean those wars are wise. I'm not saying that. I mean, I think those wars have been a horrible boondoggle. But nevertheless, there are young men wearing Thor's hammers around their neck, with Al-Satru on their dog tags, as I had, who are fighting against that very force.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that actually reminds me of the issue with some of the Eastern religions. Kind of they preach almost, well, in some instances, pacifism. And we've seen a lot of those countries that did follow, native Eastern religions actually just get taken over. For example, Pakistan. Obviously, I'm assuming that was kind of once part of India, but now it's a Muslim country, and also the Muslims are kind of going into India and trying to take over there as well. And when you've got a pretty pacifist worldview, I suppose that makes you susceptible. And I guess that's not the case with paganism.
Well, certainly that's not our case. I know many men who look forward to fighting in battle and going to Valhalla, which is one of the afterlife concepts that we have in our faith.
Are there any particular ethical kind of or moral teachings within paganism from your perspective?
Oh, absolutely. You mean in that specific regard, or just in general?
In general.
Okay. Yes. People think of those of us who practice Al-Satru and I suppose the other forms of paganism as being amoral, as not having any principles. There's a lot of people who call themselves pagans who pretty much fit that description, but they're not us. I have known a lot of people in sort of the new agey, quote, pagans, very fluffy, very, peace, love, good vibes. We're all the same, and they're all radical liberals. They're all, far left, almost all of them. But that's not us. Now, Al-Satru was founded as a folkish religion in the United States. In 1972, I set up what became the first organization dedicated to Al-Satru in the United States. And from day one, and for the next 15 years, everybody that we had was somewhere conservative to right wing. The whole gamut in there. And it was only much later that there became people practicing Al-Satru from a very liberal left way that was not specifically connected to our people. To me, Al-Satru inherently means our people. It means European descended peoples. But there's a lot of people today in our corrupt age that don't believe that. No, I think some of the moral standards, the moral values that Al-Satru are trying to practice include courage, honor, loyalty, kinship bonds, duty, cheerfulness, the ability to undergo stressful situations without succumbing to gloom and negativity. I'm not always very good at that myself, but I swear at my computer a lot. You didn't hear that.
Okay.
Anyway.
Yeah.
So that's an outline. Yeah.
Someone's actually sent in a very specific question, and it is, do you know anything about Basque paganism? And what points does it have in common with Celtic paganism?
I know nothing about Basque paganism. The Basques are a very distinct group, sitting there, largely in Spain and parts around there. I had the pleasure of being up in San Sebastian in Spain, which is sort of the Basque. If they had a capital, that would be their capital, and they're awesome people. But I know very little about their ways, to tell you the truth. I can't give you a good answer to that. I wish I could.
Okay, well, that's the answer. That's okay. Um, so, what books would you recommend people read in order to get acquainted with I guess either paganism or Alsa?
Well, of course, I would very modestly like to mention my own book, which is Also True, a Native European Spirituality. And the title says it all. This is about Native European beliefs. It is our way. It's intimately and inherently connected to our race, to our people, our set of ancestors we revere. And this is, it's right now it's not available on Amazon except at exorbitant prices because the stock has run out. I talked with the supplier, and those are basically on the way, both to Amazon, and actually people would be able to order this from me personally. And if they'd like to do that, I'll be glad to sign them or something like that.
Okay, we'll put the details in the description for people.
Any copies, any version of the Prose Edda and the Poetic Edda, and those are the original sources for most of the mythology. Again, with the understanding that mythology is symbolic. That mythology expresses realities of the soul rather than, say, history. So those would be important. One writer I like a lot is a former Cambridge professor, H.R. Ellis Davidson. She wrote a lot of great books on the ways of the North, and her scholarship is extremely sound. And in this particular volume, I like it because in it she says in effect that the beliefs of the Celts and the beliefs of the Germans are essentially two manifestations of a common underlying European religiosity. And I like that because it doesn't split us apart, it ties us together. Mm-hmm. And the name of this book is Myths and Symbols in Pagan Europe. And it's awesome. So there's a few. That'll keep them busy. The aforementioned Germanization of early medieval Christianity would be another one I would highly recommend.
So a Finnish guy has said, do you think we have enough information for clear practicing of Norse, Finnish, Astaro paganism without it feeling incomplete?
That's a very good question. And I think the answer to that is I think the answer generally is yes. Throughout all of the existence of our peoples during the pre-Christian period, you had beliefs that were practiced, 5 years before the missionaries showed up and converted people, and you have other things that were practiced for thousands of years before. And in between that very long pagan span, there would have been natural differences and evolutions and changes in the way that people practiced and what they thought about their religion and so forth. So it's not like we have to take a snapshot and just go with that. We have to understand that it's more like a video. And given that natural variety in time and also a natural variation in geography, the people in one valley in Norway might have practiced one way and the people 100 miles away might have looked at things differently. It wasn't uniform. What was important is the underlying basic factors, the basic characteristics. If we stay true to those basic principles, I think that we can produce and practice a valid form of the old paganism. It won't be identical to what people did in Finland or in Denmark or in Sweden or in England, back in the day. But it doesn't have to be because those were changing anyway. So I think it's important to identify the main principles and try to apply them intelligently. And the information that we do have, to go back to kind of what I was saying about India earlier, the first thing, look for the written sources. After that, look for comparisons from groups that are closely connected. And then finally, look for other groups, other practices, other histories, and peoples that are still within the same general framework. In the case of Asatru, that would mean, okay, the Elder Edda, the Prose Edda, the sagas, and a few other pieces for the first category. And it would mean saying, oh, okay, let's look at the Celtic material and the Slavic material and the Finnish material for the second category. And for the third one, it would be, okay, now let's expand that out to the Indo-European family in general and see what, compare it with Greece and Rome. And there's been a lot of very good comparative Indo-European work that provides a basis for this. The left hates this. The liberals can't stand this because it flies in the face of their theories about the European descended peoples and our limitations and who we were and who we weren't. Mm-hmm. But I have no problem with irritating the left.
Yeah.
I did make it down to 3 of the Berkeley events. So.
Oh, okay. So what were some of those kind of founding principles, of those key principles? Are there any you could tell us about now?
Yes. I think it's important, first of all, to understand that pagan beliefs spring from a particular people. It's not something that they acquired from a million miles away. It's something that comes from their ancestors. We believe very strongly in an intimate connection between the ancestors and their descendants. We believe in that kind of a connection very strongly. I think the essence of Asatru, for example, comes down to a comparison I sometimes use. If you had, a human suspended in space here, and sort of like that Da Vinci picture of the golden mean or whatever, and I like to think of it as connections. We're connected to various things and to different people. And I would represent that by, say, if you put axes through the human, and to the rear, the axis would be the ancestors. There's all the ancestors back there behind us. Every single one of us has a long, gray, invisible line behind us, figuratively speaking, of the ancestors. People who lived and died, who lived at least long enough to reproduce, people who survived famine and flood and war and disease to pass on the torch of life. We owe them something. We are connected to them. We are their latest manifestation in this little slice of space and time. So behind that figure, we have the ancestors. In front, the descendants, those yet to come. We are all ancestors in training. 100 years from now, 200 years from now, 300 years from now, your descendants are going to read about you, or maybe they'll have the equivalent of Ancestry.com or whatever, and they'll say, "Who was that gal? What did she do? What kind of person was she?" We hear some real stories about her. They're going to want to know about you. We're all ancestors in training, and it's our duty to represent well to those who will come after us and to give them a good future. Off to the side, out from our shoulders, we have that cohort of people who are with us now, our living kin, our brothers and sisters and cousins, those of us who are in this world at this time, and we need connections with them as well. Above, we're connected with the holy powers, however you conceive of them, from either the gods and the goddesses. And this connection with the divine has to be there. And finally, below is the connection with the earth, with the natural world. To me, that is the essence of religion. The word religion, my Latin again is pretty flaky, but the word religion is derived from a Latin root that has to do with connecting, with tying things together or chaining things together. And that is connection. It's connection with the ancestors, with the holy powers. I sometimes say holy powers instead of gods and goddesses because people get such a stereotype. God, well, no, God, they've got their own views of that, I'm being a little,
Yeah, preconceived ideas about it.
but yeah, no insults intended. But the holy powers, however they manifest to you, and of course with the material world, with nature, with the world around us, we are not separate from nature, and we cannot abuse nature, and we abuse it at our risk. So I'm sort of a right-wing environmentalist. In fact, I'm very much a right-wing environmentalist, but that's a whole other story.
Yeah, why not? Hey, I think that the left have a habit of trying to kind of co-opt everything that's beautiful. Even rainbows. They've taken rainbows as one of their symbols for degeneracy now.
You're absolutely right. That's a great comparison. Yeah. Yeah, and they don't own that. I mean, in America, I know we've had some astoundingly non-liberal environmentalists. A guy named Edward Abbey, a cantankerous old guy who wrote magnificent books like Desert Solitaire and a number of others. And he was a gun-owning, beer-drinking, hell-raising, law-breaking, hunting environmentalist. It's not just liberals. You don't have to live in Portland. Excuse me, all you people in Portland, and wear Birkenstocks and drink herb tea to be an environmentalist. You can be a rough, tough, rugged environmentalist as well. Those are the people I like.
Right. And what's your perspective on sacrifices? I think this is one of the things that comes to mind when people hear about paganism. They think sacrifices. Obviously, sacrifices were part of Christianity. I'm not sure, actually, but I know that they're written about in the Bible and things like that. So what part does that sacrifices play? What do they mean? Do you still do them?
That's a magnificent question. I'm sitting here petting my cat right now, who is not, in fact, a future sacrifice. See, our view of the gods and goddesses, the holy powers, is that they are two things to us. They are our kin and they are our friends. They're not like above us. They are above us in magnitude, but they are similar to us. In fact, in terms of soul and spirit, they are identical with us, just bigger. Like this, I have the same essence as the god Thor, but the difference is one of magnitude. I would be a little leaky faucet. That would be my power, and Thor would be Niagara Falls. I mean, we are kin with the holy powers. And in Germanic society, there's two things that you do with kin. You're loyal to them, and you give them presents, you give them gifts, you connect with them. We have sayings in the Older Edda, same as the Poetic Edda, that talks about this. It says, give gifts to your friends and go visit them often, and because otherwise, the road between you will grow brambly and bushy, and be hard to navigate. So keep those lines with people open. The way we see the gods and goddesses, when we quote sacrifice, it's not like, oh, we're going to give X and Y and Z to Odin so that he won't smite us. Mm-hmm. Not at all. No, he is our kin. He won't smite us. We give gifts to him and to Freya and to Frigga and to whatever, not as something given to a master from a slave. It's not like that. This is not a slave relationship. It's a gift that we give out of love. But a gift calls for a return. In the old Nordic society, if you gave someone a gift, they would really be expected to give, something comparable back, because that was just the dynamic of it. It was an exchange of gifts, of love, of energy, and that is exactly the way we treat the gods and goddesses. They're gifts that we give to our kin, and we receive their gifts in turn. So, in the old days, goodness knows what they did in the old days. People want to make a huge deal of human sacrifice, and apparently it did happen. But I think that was wrong. I think that was a misunderstanding. I believe that as history moves on, I believe the holy powers reveal more to us about what they expect. The gods and goddesses don't need blood. They don't need corpses. They don't need any of that stuff. They don't need money. I wish I, um, but, but what they do want is the same thing our friends want, and accidentally, not accidentally, the same thing that our ancestors want. They want to be remembered. They want to be honored. They want us to be with them and to maintain a relationship of love and connection and kinship with them. In Asatru, we have two primary religious rituals. One is the blot. The blot is the, quote, sacrifice. Now, essentially, in the ritual, the person leading it fills a horn with mead, good old honey wine, which represents the mead of inspiration that Odin won, and probably goes back to something like that Soma or Amrita of the Indo-Aryans, and offers that to the deity. But we all know as we do that that is symbolic. The deity doesn't need mead. They don't need blood. They don't need gold. They don't need mead. What they need is us, that connection with us. They need our love, our loyalty, us standing beside them in the struggle of life. They need that sort of intangible from us. It's just a symbol. So that's the one ritual we do, the blot, or so-called sacrifice. The other one is one I really like, called a sumbel. And this can be traced back through Old Anglo-Saxon and back to the Old Norse. Essentially, this is a ritual that takes the power of the past, the power of the ancestors, the power of those who have gone before us. The way we do it, we pass it 3 times around, and each person makes a toast. In the first toast, they toast a particular deity from our pantheon. And in the second one, they will toast an ancestor of theirs, some relative, some ancestor, and usually it's things like, you know, your grandfather, your mother, your uncle, or your ancestor who first came to America, or think something of that sort. And you recount that person's heroism, their intelligence, their good sense of humor, their all the good things about them, because those are the traits that we're pulling up out of the past. We're pulling that wisdom, that courage, that strength, that sense of the past to use for ourselves. And then the third time around is sort of the wild card line. You can, you could salute a god or a goddess. You could mention another ancestor. You could recite a poem. You could sing a song. You could do any of those things. So that's sort of our ritual framework as practiced in the Asatru folk assembly.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Well,
I'm throwing a lot at you.
Sorry, what was that?
I said I'm throwing an awful lot of information at you.
No, that's good. That's what I want. So, I was actually going to ask, what kind of a message do you have for those people who are just kind of listening to this out of curiosity? How would it benefit them to learn more about paganism?
I think if they learn more about particularly their ethnic paganism, it's not going to benefit them to learn about ancient Egyptian paganism. They need to know about their ancestors, their forebears, the people with whom they are connected beyond space and time. The line of descent is one. They need to learn about their own ancestral beliefs. They need to remember the ancestors, those people who lived and who died and who passed on that torch of life that they could be here, and have a fair respect for it. Right. They don't have to follow. They don't have to think that you've got to be a pagan. No, you don't. You don't. You can be a Christian, and you'll still be my friend, and I'll still fight by you. But
right. So that's the main thing, is like actually go and find out about your ancestors and how they lived and what they believed, and you don't have to believe in anything, just make that connection with your ancestors.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I'm going to put all the links to your website and social media in the description. Is there anywhere in particular that you'd like to direct people to find more information about you?
Well, right now, I would say my YouTube channel,
Okay.
Stephen McNallen. That's I'm there's oh gosh, there's so many things going on right now, and I've
Hmm.
got so many things coming to a head. And within a matter of days, I hope to have a website because we've got these other projects we're doing, and so I would say for now the YouTube.
Okay, great. Fantastic. Well, thanks to everyone for listening to this show, and I'll catch you guys in the next episode. Thanks again, Stephen.
Thank you very much.